Do you need me to play intro music right now?
I'm trying to remember what it is.
Yeah.
That's it.
Here we go.
Oh, airplane mode.
That's not it. And now we've got Tyler Scott, ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages of appropriate listening age, it's time. What's the name of the podcast again? The Youth Ministry.
I hate your guys.
The Youth Ministry Podcast with your host, Mark Cox. Its special guest, Tyler, the man Scott.
This for sure sounds like the way, like when you would listen to, we're recording, by the way, and I am for sure including all of this.
Well, it's gonna get
ghetto up in here.
It's gonna get copyrighted.
We'll see about that.
I'm pretty sure AC/DC did not give us permission to use their song.
Little do you know, that's my uncle. Mr. AC is my uncle.
What's the A and the C stand for?
Andrew Cox.
And Derek.
Andrew
and Derek. Oh, Uncle Andrew and Cousin Derek.
Best idea, worst idea for us to do a podcast together.
Best ever.
Best ever.
Goal of this today is to still have jobs.
Well, for those of you that don't go to Houston's First, my
Why
guest
don't you?
today is... why not?
Why? Drive here. Come on.
What's wrong with you? My guest today is Tyler Scott. Tyler is our kids director here at the Siena campus. And
put some respect on my name.
Put some...
Minister.
Thank
you.
Of children's ministries.
Thank you.
I am so sorry.
Put some respect on my name.
Tyler, give us like 60 seconds of Tyler. Who are you and what are you all about? Give us the important things. We know you're married and you have 4 kids.
Yes, my wife Courtney and I have 4 kids that are old, 13, 11, 9, and 6. Mm-hmm. I remembered all their ages. 3 boys and a little baby girl. Graduated of the University of Houston. Prepared me for ministry by getting a business management degree.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. And I've been working here at the church for 7 years, been in ministry 14 years. And Mark Cox's best friend. If anyone else is listening to it, I'll leg wrestle you to prove it.
You gave me my first smoker.
I did.
Can we talk about that for a second?
Meat smoker. Let's make sure we put some disclaimers on what we're talking about. I did. Gave you your first electric smoker.
Yeah. I
think brand new. It was $50, so it was not a lot of.
It was awesome.
I didn't have anything to give.
It is one of my favorite new hobbies, and
it shows.
Ooh.
I'm sorry.
We're off to a great start. We are 3 minutes and 35 seconds in as my recording goes, and I've already been called fat.
Well,
so that's great.
Tyler, we like meat.
We do.
Smoked meats.
So the idea of this podcast is, and I've been really excited about this one because we are releasing this on July 15th, which is like dead in the middle of the summer, but also almost a month out from what we call Promotion Sunday, which is when everyone in the church world is going to, at least birth through 18, is going to kind of move up a year in the same way that they do for school. And so that is really important, specifically for kids in our world going into first grade, because that means they'll go from the preschool department to the kids department.
That's right. Big day.
And then the 5th graders moving into 6th grade are going from elementary kids into youth, which is probably the most crazy, stressful.
It's a big change, I think, for parents, for kids. It's a big change. I mean, I think no matter how hard you try to make kids ministry prepare kids for what's next, it's just always a big change. You got to rip that Band-Aid off.
Yeah.
It's the same way, going from an elementary school up to a middle school. If you've ever visited a middle school, which I know you do because you're a youth minister, you walk up there and you're like, there's grown men walking around with mustaches next to a little kid who's still 4'2", and they're in the same grade.
And we talked about that so I have a 6th grader going into 7th grade this year. You have a 7th grader going into 8th grade and a 5th grader going into 6th grade. Yep. I know that's a lot, but we've got them in all the different transitions. So you're about to have
more ways than one. Hey, a lot of odors coming out of some
I was
of
going to
those.
say, let's make sure we specify which kind of transitions we're talking about here,
Yes.
Tyler, because lots of different kinds.
A lot of deodorant being used
of
in my
those.
house.
A lot of deodorant. That's good. There's shaving happening.
We did.
Of mustaches.
That was a big day.
That was a big day.
He has convinced me that he needs to shave every day now.
Yeah.
I'm like, he goes, Dad, there's a little whisker. I'm like, buddy, you'll be fine. No, I think I need to shave again.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
like,
peach
all right, go for
fuzz.
it.
He's got to get that taken care of.
Yes.
So let me ask you this. Okay, so you and I'm talking to a dad. I'm talking to a minister. I'm talking to someone that super cares about development of the next generation. What are some traits and markers that you hope to see, like when these kids are leaving kids ministry and going into the student ministry? What do you hope to see out of that?
Yeah, I think that's something you and I talk about a lot. I think one of the big things that you and I talk about, and I think any parent would kind of feel this, is when you're moving from elementary up to middle school, you've got this transition happening. Obviously, you're starting to give your kid more. You're giving them more freedom. You're giving them more opportunities. The cell phone conversation for a lot of people is happening around that age. It might happen earlier, it might happen later, but there's just a lot of responsibilities. But also in their walk with the Lord, it's an opportunity for kids. I really feel like middle school is when kids really start to, for at least in my experience with my own kids, and then also just what I've seen in ministry, is that's when you start to transition from this faith of my father, as I call it, like, hey, you tell your kids when they're younger, they don't really have a choice. They're riding with you to church because, well, you can't leave them at home by themselves. And so they're going, and then, middle school things start to happen. They have sports teams. They have opportunities for other things. Maybe as a family, we're kind of going in different directions. And so as a kid, they have more choices. And so that's an opportunity for them to really start to grow in their own faith, them to really take ownership of it. Maybe, it's them for the first time, instead of just doing family devotionals, what if I read the Bible on my own? And so for me as a children's minister, and even as a dad, some of the big markers I'm looking for is in kids ministry. I'm real big on where are things in the Bible. It seems so easy, but every time we read something in the Bible, my kids, this is in the Old Testament or is it in the New Testament? And they tell me, what book of the Bible is it? I do a lot of that just because I don't want them to be that kid when they get into middle school. When you say, hey, turn to Mark, they're like, where's that at? Because, I think both of us can remember middle school, high school, one of our biggest goals was just to fit in. Like, I don't want to stand out. And so when they get into these these new areas, I'm like, let's try to just kill some of the I don't fit in situations. So where are things in the Bible? But even more so than that, just a very clear, precise understanding of what the gospel is. I want them to be able to recite that to me, to be able to explain it. I'll be completely honest. Not every kid has accepted the gospel as truth in their own life, but I want them to at least understand what it is. And then even more so than that they know that there are people in their church or in their life that care about them, that there are believers, men and women that are strong, faithful believers that believe in them, have spoken things over them that then you're able to take, as a youth minister and your leadership team are able to take and say, hey, you know what, we're seeing this in you. And so that we're continuing, this is a path of discipleship. And so, as we make that transition, I'm trying to give those kids more freedom. I always tell parents, this is a great summer. If your kid does not have their own Bible, this is the time to do it. We give kids when they move into first grade, we kind of give them the first grade Bible. It's every kid has the same one in first kids, which is really fun when they lose it.
Yeah, right.
Because every kid's like, that's mine. I'm like, no, it doesn't have your name in it, kid. But this is a great time for them to go and find their own Bible, because kids start to have different ideas. I know one of my sons is huge in history. He loves archaeology and things like that. I'm like, well, we're going to go find you a historical archaeological Bible where, it has those little footnotes. It talks about, this is where we found this. And so he loves that. Whereas another kid might be a doodler. Get them the, I forgot what,
journal Bible.
The journal Bible. Just finding things that appeal to their personality, letting them have some ownership of it. 10 years ago, I'd say go to Barnes & Noble, but are they still around?
Right. Books A Million.
Books, yeah. Go down to the thrift store and see. But finding some different options online, or we're always happy to kind of show some things we enjoy. But really giving your kid an opportunity to say, hey, this is something I'm interested in. Let's go get them a Bible and kind of let them start to express their faith as their own.
Yeah. You talked about you talked a lot there about some great things, but one of the things that I want to
say.
Yeah, you talk too much.
Tyler.
You talked about an element of your strategy that I wanted to ask you about, which is just kind of the leaders who care, and I think that's one of maybe our strengths at the Siena campus is we understand very clearly, even from Kara Powell's research, how important it is to have 5 key adults.
Yeah.
I know that's a part of your life. You're trying to keep 5 key adults around each of your kids, and kind of this village thing. What are some other elements of your strategy in kids ministry? And I mean, considering you've got 1st and 5th graders in the same room at times.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, from a kids ministry standpoint, I think, and most people would agree, we have a lot of fun. I mean, I want to. Some people have maybe heard me talk about, our church core values, relevant biblical community. And I think in order to be relevant in a kid's life, it has to be a place they want to be a part of. And so there's excitement, there's fun. I think, sometimes people take that to mean it's over the top. And we're not trying to be the circus. I don't have any elephants dancing around. I'm not trying to be the amusement park, though if the budget would allow, I would have a giraffe. No, I heard a good joke the other day.
Let's hear it. Let's
throw
interrupt the podcast for this.
Hey, we're going to interrupt this regularly scheduled program for a Chuck Norris joke.
This is the most Tyler Scott. Okay, all right.
For a Chuck Norris joke. Once upon a time, Chuck Norris kicked a horse in the chin, and its offspring were known as giraffes. You didn't even flinch.
I don't get it. Why don't I get it?
He kicked a horse in its neck. Oh. This joke was brought to you by...
Oh, gosh. Well, I'm sorry. That's funny. It was a great joke. I didn't get it.
I was at Raising Cane's, and that was on the wall, and I thought it was awesome.
That
okay,
makes sense. Raising Cane's. Okay,
we're back.
Joke, and we're back.
That bad dad joke brought to you by Tyler Scott. No, what were we talking about? I'm so sorry.
Element of your strategies.
Yes, so strategy. So, we want it to be a fun environment. We want it to be a place that kids want to be. But even more than that, and I would say, if anyone's in ministry, I'm very passionate about this. Don't think that over the top equals fun. What I always say is personal equals fun.
Right.
When, I loved when we were at that Orange Conference a few years ago when they were talking about how do you make ministry personal? You know a kid's name. Where am I from? What am I about?
Yeah.
When kids know that when you're able to look them in the eye and say, I know your name. I know how to pronounce it correctly because some of us live in multicultural areas where it's like, that's a lot of vowels.
We tested that yesterday.
It was, hey, I have to get down on a knee a lot. And I'm like, can you tell me one more time, big buddy?
Say it one more time.
Yeah. I have a name, Matthew Tyler Scott. That's my full name. So it's kind of, so I've learned from that. But also, like, where are you from? And so when kids know, like, that person knows me. And when they walk in and they see a smile and a high five, and, you're willing to say, like, hey, how was your baseball game? I remember last time I saw you, you were worried about your baseball game or that test, or tell me about your puppy. When kids know, to me, that's when it becomes relevant and fun because they're like, man, that person cares about me. And I think as leaders in ministry and as parents, we show our kids what matters by us remembering what they tell us. And we have to earn the right to speak into their lives. For me, that's a big thing. I tell all of our leaders, we have to earn the right to speak into a family's life. There's information overload coming from all these different places, and so we have to earn the right to be the one voice they want to listen to. And you're talking about research. A lot of research has shown that the church has maybe lost some of that. Yeah. And so how do we regain that? And that's by being relevant, being able to provide the resources when they ask, hey, we need help with this. I'm by no stretch of the imagination an expert at anything, but I can help you find it. And so when I'm looking at kids ministry in 1st through 5th graders, which is a huge transition, but from those little bitty guys all the way up to the ones getting ready to come to student ministry, how do I make this relevant? How do I make it fun? And then also, how do I help them take ownership of ministry? Like in our kids ministry, we get the kids up on stage to help lead with worship. We have the kids praying for other kids. I'll tell you, man, and if you want to see as a family, if you're not having your kids pray out loud, do it because it's so good. Yeah.
And they're embarrassed too, and you just gotta kind of push them.
And it's a great teaching moment because everything. I mean, just finding ways to teach our kids and just and disciple them. That's what it is. It isn't just a one moment thing. Hey, we took the course and we graduated. Right. It's walking them through it. But some of my sweetest moments in kids ministry has been when I've taken prayer requests and I've seen a kid, take a moment to pray for another kid. And I mean, I'm over there, tears in my eyes, crying. Watching, what these kids, just what can come out of them. I joke with people all the time that in kids ministry, you may pray for a dead animal from time to time, a dead pet, because they're like, can you pray for my dog? It died 2 years ago. And I'm like, sure, buddy. Yeah. But also, you learn a lot about what's going on in their hearts. Yeah. And so, those, you kind of have to be prepared. But from a strategic standpoint, just having people in your ministry who care about the kids
Yeah.
and are going to show up on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science. I think a lot of people know that, but we have to be intentional about how we do it. And from that, we gain the right to speak into their lives and show those kids what matters. And so hopefully we're equipping them to the point when they get to the hub, your student ministry, any youth ministry, that they're looking back going, man, that was important. Look what I learned there. And ideally, they're like, how do I start to give back? Because that's when they start to make the faith their own, you know. And so I know you've done a good job. We've been really pushing, and you've been pushing, you know, how do we get students serving? If you show me a healthy church, and I'll show you a church that probably has students serving in the church.
Yeah.
If you show me a dying church, you're probably going to see a church that has a lot of students that are sitting in the back, and they've never been. And I would argue, this is just Tyler Scott 101. It isn't that they don't want to serve. They've never been asked. They've never been given the opportunity, because it's like, well, you're not ready or you're not this. And I'm like, man, I would push against that, because I think you and I both would say, even in ministry, we weren't ready.
Right.
God called us to it, and we're like, well, let's go and teach me and figure it out.
A lot of loving these kids and teenagers is pushing them into areas where they're not ready to get pushed.
Right.
Sending them to camp when they're not necessarily ready to go yet. And I know there's a balance there. There's a dance. And maybe your kid's not ready to go to camp. Maybe your kid's not ready to serve yet. But having a conversation, I think, you know, there's a lot of areas, too, in which, kind of like you're talking about the adults that care, specifically with our church, I know that those are in large part different adults. So they're going to transition from talking about like from 1st to 5th grade, but talking about now from 6th to 12th grade, my area that I get to serve in is we've got different adults who care, but there is kind of a transition. There is kind of a big step. And, you know, and moms, as far as the school goes, moms and dads are looking at a whole different set of systems with middle school instead of elementary.
Right.
I remember specifically when my current oldest kid, he's going into 7th grade, this last school year, I would ask him about kind of the kids who get in fights at school, for example.
No.
It's not the 6th graders, it's the 7th and 8th graders. And so there's this kind of, the 6th graders are still kind of like, they're like 5th graders plus, you know what I mean? Like they're still they're freshmen in middle school. And so they're trying to figure it out. Let me ask you this. What do you think are some of the concerns that these 5th grade parents have? And you might even branch into the school or the community or the puberty or the like all the different things, like the having conversations at home, the attitude that's like forthcoming.
Yeah.
Mine showed up at 7th grade. You know, that's I find a lot.
Your kid has an attitude?
And it's like he is not in 7th grade yet. He just was an early achiever.
Well, I think I can speak for myself personally, and I just conversations I've even had in the last year. Is my kid ready? And I think a lot of parents are like, what do I do?
Yeah.
You know, oh, well, I need to, oh man, I you know, just be not trying to be funny. You know, a lot of parents like, I haven't talked to my kid. I haven't had a sex talk with my kid. And I'm like, right. Well, let's talk about it. Oh, I haven't talked to my kids about these different cultural things. And I always tell parents, if you're not talking to your kid about it, society is, and you can close your kid off from every social media outlet there is, which I think, you know, definitely I salute a lot of parents and those that have given their kid access to it. You know, we just definitely want to make sure that we're discipling our children and what that should look like. In the same way that we disciple our children in giving and what it means to have a quiet time and to walk with the Lord, we disciple our children and how they utilize digital content. But my encouragement to kids, to parents, is always don't be afraid to just have a conversation. So I think for you and I, like growing up in our age, you know, is always like, have you had the talk?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, it's not a talk. It's a conversation.
Series of talks, yeah.
It's just a conversation. Like, hey, I want to open up avenues of dialogue between you, and it's going to be awkward. And I'm not even just referencing, you know, what it means, like, you know, what it means to be in a relationship, and different things. I'm just any type of conversation. I mean, just you have to be the parent. Like, you have to be willing to have those talks with your kids and those conversations and let it just kind of marinate in the awkwardness. I've learned to enjoy those moments because I'm like, this is fun. I can see my kids kind of squirming a little bit, but it also is just a great opportunity to kind of just slowly peer into their heart. And so, you know, from a concern standpoint, I think a lot of parents struggle with that. They're like, what do I do? And so, you know, here at the church, we have resources. We're constantly pushing out. You know, I know I'm huge on the Parent Q app. Every week, there's 2 or 3 questions. It's just talk to your kid about this. It isn't in depth. Like, it's just ask your kid this question. And so I think a good way to look at it is don't talk to your kid, talk with your kid, and no matter what age. So instead of talking to them, looks like, hey, you're going to see some kids, maybe getting into a fight or talking about drugs. You make sure you don't do that. That's talking to your kid. Talking with your kid is, hey, what are some things you're seeing at school that kind of worry you, or what are some things you don't understand, or as you move into youth group, what are some things you're scared of, or what are some things that maybe don't use the word scared, but what are some things you're anxious about. And so just open up that dialogue, and then from there, just encourage them. When you see them, I like to tell parents, catch your kid being good. Catch them, instead of, and it's
Call
hard.
it out.
Instead, and it's hard. When you see your kid doing what you want them to do, catch them and say, hey, I really appreciate the way you just did that, because that it's an internal reinforcement of what you want. You hope they'll do again, instead of always looking for they're in a bad mood again. Yeah. Hey, why are you yelling at me? And so I think for every parent that's moving from a kids ministry into a youth ministry, it's okay to be worried. Just express those, kind of be willing to talk with your kid. You touched on something a minute ago that strategically I always encourage parents. As a minister in our church, my goal is that every kid does at least one overnight event in kids ministry. And a lot of parents, you said it, aren't comfortable quite yet with their kid doing that. I always tell them, well, when you get to youth, everyone's going to start doing it. And so then you're going to have to pull, at some point you hopefully pull that Band-Aid off and you get them to go. And so, going in kids ministry, allowing your kid to go on that one overnight, they're typically shorter. They're less intense. There's a lot more accessibility, like you guys were just at camp, and I think you might have been off. Like, I don't know that you had cell service the whole
No. So and we do stair step with everything. So when we teach them about missions, or when we take them on missions trips, there's a stair step, there's a progression. And when we take them on trips, so I think your trip, the farthest you take kids is Waxahachie right now.
Waxahachie.
Right. Yeah,
just doing
and then I take them maybe a few hours further.
Yeah.
How far is Waxahachie away? It's like 2-3 hours.
It's south
further.
4 hours maybe.
4. Okay, so 4.
It's that far.
So I'm taking middle schoolers 5.5 hours away. I'm taking high schoolers to Panama City. Yeah, then I'm taking the older high schoolers to New York City and DC, which is further away. And then the
that's very
12th
strategic.
graders in college go international.
Yes.
And so we do stair step.
Yes.
And what we've learned is that those moms are saying, like, thank you. I mean, that first step of sending your kid to camp for the first time is scary. Yeah. But man, it really builds.
And a lot of times I've learned that this isn't across the board, but my kid's not ready a lot of times means mom or dad's not quite ready.
Sure.
And so I realized, okay, let's talk through this. And they're like, well, they're gonna go, but just be prepared. I'm gonna need to come pick them up early. I'm like, okay, great. Yeah. And then I'm getting the phone call the first night. How are they doing? Do you need me to come get them? I'm like,
they're doing
they're great. They have best friends. They've made friends with everyone.
They're having a blast.
Yeah, they're having a blast. They're already asleep. So do you need me to? Are you good, Mom? But as a church, we recognize that these are all just I call them cornerstones. Those cornerstones of growth. Those moments of transition. Yeah, which I think we should celebrate. Like a book. And not to get off on a tangent, a book I highly recommend for parents, especially for parents of boys, because I have 3 boys, it's called Raising a Modern Day Knight. And the whole book is just talking about what it means to transition from one phase of life to the next, and being intentional as a parent of, you're moving from this age to this age, in 5th to 6th grade, huge transition. And so celebrate it. Yeah. Sit your kid down. I know for me, when my kids turn 10, I do a trip. I just take one kid, 10-year-old. What is something you're interested in? We're going to go do a trip. Yeah. The trip is just the avenue for me to have conversations with my kid. Right. One of my kids I took to SeaWorld. We did a behind-the-scenes tour. Another kid, we went and toured a cave. I've got another son turning 10 this year, and I have no clue. No, next year. I have no clue what we're doing, but we'll do something that speaks to his little heart. And then as they continue to get older, and you talked about it earlier, having those intentional relationships in your kid's life, those people that can speak into your kid's life, not just you as a parent, but they're essentially reinforcing everything you say, those deep relationships. And I think a lot of people, that's something they crave. And there isn't a magic sauce. There isn't a special sauce that makes it happen. It takes work. Yeah. You just have to form.
You got to be in people's lives. You got to be out there. You got to be networking a little bit. And but I think that's huge. Having other adults. And I said it earlier, and I want to reinforce it. Like, we're seeing the research show that if you want your kids' faith to stick, man, 5 key adults. There's other markers too, but there's 5 key adults in their life, like checking in on them and all that kind of stuff. That's so huge.
And that person, what it looks like, it isn't necessarily someone they see every day. It's just someone that knows what's happening.
Yeah.
And you have to be intentional. I mean, for me, and I'm not pretending to be the expert at this, but there's individuals that I've gone to and just said, I give you permission to speak into my kid's life. I trust you. I love you as a brother or sister in Christ, that I trust you enough that when you say something, and I tell my kids, if they say something, it's the same as if, this individual says something to you, it's the same as if I'm speaking.
Yeah.
That I joked with someone the other day. I was like, it's kind of like a really nice life insurance policy, not to sound morbid. If something happens to me, there's still people I know I can know and trust. Obviously my wife will be there, and you never hope that, but you also want to know that, hey, there's people speaking in my kid's life. They're going to check in on them and love them and be a part of that.
Yeah.
So if you have a parent, if you're as a parent realize, man, that's something that's really resonating, I challenge you. It isn't a natural conversation that happens in our society. It's kind of like the old, and I think it still happens, the accountability partner idea. Going to someone and saying, hey, I want you to be the person that holds me accountable. It's not something we naturally do as human, especially as Americans, because we don't like to show vulnerability. That's a big word.
Vulnerabilities. You got it.
That's a big word, Daddy. But I would encourage people, find those relationships and start with 1, and then work your way up to 5. And that's where the church can be such a great resource, because there's people here that love, want to be a part of that and invest in your children and invest in your family. Because really investment in your child is an investment in your family. And, strong, healthy families build a strong, healthy church.
That's good.
Yeah.
Say that one more time. Strong healthy families build a strong, healthy church.
Can we put that on
That's
a T-shirt?
good.
Can we do a T-shirt?
Should be somewhere. Let me ask you this question. Let me make it really personal for you. You've got your oldest going into 8th, and you've got your second oldest going into 6th.
Yeah.
So what have you learned in the last couple years about having your oldest in middle school that might shift a little bit with your second oldest, or reinforce? Have you had the talk with Isaac?
Yeah.
It was a lot
easier.
And I say the talk, I mean the series of talks, but
it was a lot different. You learn, obviously, as your kids, I really think your kids' personalities really start to shine through.
Yes. And they're different. They're all different.
I mean, every parent can look at a 5-year-old, when they're different ages and kind of recognize, but I really think you start to see some personalities because kids start to kind of realize I have a voice. In that 4th to 5th grade range, and then moving into middle school. And so that's happened with us. I can tell you just from personal experience, my 2 oldest sons are completely different kids.
Yeah.
I mean, they're related, but they're completely different people.
Yeah.
And so I've definitely learned a few lessons. I apologize to my oldest on a pretty frequent basis, because I always tell him, you're my test subject, because I've never done this before. You're the first one. I said, the benefit is you get to do everything first.
Yeah.
The downside is I'm probably not going to do it right. But trust me, when I get down to the 4th, your sister, who's the youngest, man, we're going to be good. We're going to be so good at this. And so the conversations have been clunky at times.
Yeah.
And funny. You've heard my funny, should we tell the story? I think we should tell the story.
I think we should.
So this is going to help every parent that's afraid to talk to their kid, have a sex talk with their kid. When my oldest was in, I think, 4th grade, he's always been a very inquisitive kid. He loved to ask questions. He was like the Nat Geo kid of the world. He watched every documentary about every animal, and I'm like, whoa, procreation and going on.
He seriously knows.
Yes.
He answers all of my biological questions.
About animals.
About animals. Not about.
Oh, it got weird.
Oh, gee.
Yep. It's on the interweb forever. Okay. And I hope if you hear this and you know my son, don't embarrass him too much with it. But, oh well. It's my job as a parent. So he, about 4th grade, I heard him downstairs ask my wife, hey, what is sex? And I don't think she dropped a glass and it shattered, but I could hear her as quick as she could. Go ask your dad, because she had been telling me, you need to talk to him about this. And I'm like, oh. So I hear him walking up the steps to the stairs, and it's one of those little Lord Jesus, be near moments, because I'm like, well, this is happening.
Here we
so
go.
He comes up and he goes, Dad, what is sex? I'm like, well, so I give him, being the timid first-time dad I am.
When a mommy loves a daddy.
Yes, love him when a mommy loves a daddy. No, so I kind of give him the basics, and I could tell it didn't satisfy.
Sure.
So then I'm like, well, I guess he needs to know. So we go into a much deeper conversation about procedural things. And so we had a pretty deep conversation. His face was aghast with horror the whole time, as I think any of us would have been, because he's like, really? And so we're going through this whole conversation. We have it all, and we get to the end. I'm like, buddy, you have questions? I want you to always know I want to be be here for you. Like, ask me questions like this. And it was really a sweet moment. And he, at the end, he's like, I never want to talk about this again. I'm like, well, we will, but it's fine. But I said, hey, you're only in 4th grade. Like, where did you learn the word sex? And he goes, well, it's school. And I'm like, dadgum.
Wow.
Public school. Like, I hate you. I'm kidding.
Already.
I love public school. I'm like, so tell me, like, did a kid say it to you? Or like, heaven forbid, like, was a kid like showing you something on their phone? Like, I'm worried as a dad. And we got to ask these questions. And he goes, no. I saw it on a poster. And I'm like, good grief. What are we teaching our kids on a poster? And he goes, yeah, it was on a poster in the cafeteria back where the workers are, like the cafeteria workers are. And he goes, it's that poster, that has like Statue of Liberty. And in that moment, I realized it's the poster it's like the workers like rights poster that's in every business on mankind that said no one can be discriminated against for their like sex, creed, religion. And so I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a different sex.
He really just meant gender.
And I'm like, so everything I just told you, that's a different word. He goes, but it's spelled the same. Yeah. And that was my first talk with my kids. But
so great.
Yeah, each of them are different. I think you want to celebrate each child. What works with one is not going to work with the other. Parents know this, but it just becomes much more amplified in middle school. Yeah. I mean, I think you'd probably have seen that to an extent just working with kids.
Well, and even in conversations with my kids, it's been interesting because it wasn't one topic was introduced at a time. It was, and I think this is probably the part that's just going to be scary for parents. And, it's like, I guess you just got to tell the truth. Like, your kids are going to hear a lot when they step into that middle school phase. And it's not that they won't hear it in elementary, but like middle school is kind of like we're going to kick the door wide open. And it's not that they're hearing it from their teachers necessarily. Maybe they are. By and large, they're hearing it from other kids, and it's all the different topics. And in today's culture, it's going to be everything from sex to gender fluidity to drugs to music they listen to, the TV shows, movies they watch.
Dude, middle schoolers are very political now. I mean,
very political.
They're like, who you vote for? And I'm like, whoa, I don't know you.
We have middle schoolers that were, I'll just say it carefully here, have been upset in the last few years about the way things are happening politically, the way the church is relating to that, whether it's racism or politics or issues of justice. Yeah. And they're getting in on the conversation. And I love it. I honestly love it because it's an opportunity to talk. And maybe it's easier for me because they're not my kids. But if my kids want to talk about it, I'm game. But that's one of those things. It's just as parents, you're just going to have to be prepared to have these conversations with your kids. And honestly, I feel like it's part of what is the verse that talks about, you raise your kid up in the way they should go and they'll never depart from the truth. Right. And every parent is probably going to teach their kids differently. There's a lot of nuance in that. But as far as parents who are faithfully like trying to teach their kids the things of the Lord, that is an amazing opportunity to teach their kids something. Now, your kid's probably going to go in and talk to their friends about it and get roasted by another kid, but that's all part of it. Like, that's what it is.
And what you just said, I think, is why it's so important, no matter what age, no matter how young your kid is, you're asking, you're not teaching to them, you're talking with them and digging in. So even if you've got a first grader, a kindergartner, just getting into the habit of, not asking the yes and no questions, asking the, like, tell me what's on your heart. Yeah. And at first, it might feel weird to ask a 6-year-old that, what's on your heart? But they'll learn that, like, what your goal as a parent is to become the place that they come for that. That they come to ask questions. And then our goal as a church, for you and I know this is something we both feel very passionate about, is when the parent doesn't know what to say, they come to us, not because we're the expert, but because we want to be a resource. I always tell parents, you're the primary source of discipleship in your kid's life, because it doesn't matter how often your kid's here at the church, you're going to see them 100 times more than I'll ever see your kid. You have that much more of an opportunity. But we want to be a resource, whether it's, us providing, just little conversation guides. And I always tell people, don't get bogged down with, I got to go take a 6-week course. There's some great courses out there. Just be willing to maybe read a book.
Yeah.
Or, pick up some quick guide type deals, which I know we try to provide. We email out to parents like, hey, I remember after what happened in Uvalde, it was, such a tragic situation, just sending out a 1-page guide like, hey, here's gun violence is a reality in our world. And we're not getting into the political side. What we're getting into is the heart of what's happening in our kids' lives, because there were kids at a school who were scared.
Yeah.
And there were kids, unfortunately, that died at a school. And so for your child, being able to know that they have a place that I can process this. And so we just sent out a guide, like, how do you talk to your kids about this? Is it hard? Yes. Does it stink? Yes. But do we need to have those conversations? Yes. Because if you don't, someone else is going to fill that void, whether it's another kid who may or may not have a clue what they're talking about. Maybe it is, not saying that other people in the world are bad. It's just I want to be the first place they come to.
Right.
And or those other individuals that I have given permission to speak into my kid's life. And so, the more you do that at a younger age, the more likely your kid is to come to you when they get to middle school and high school.
That's good.
And I'm under no, visions of grandeur or delusional. There's probably people with high schoolers listening to this saying, well, yeah, wait till your kid's in high school. Fortunately, my wife and I had an opportunity for 4 years to work with at-risk high schoolers. I have had, 8 to 9 juniors and seniors in high school that live in my house it was either jail or they lived with me. And so they weren't my own children, but I tried to treat them as such. And I saw firsthand, like, I get it. Like, they're not going to always come to you. But your goal as a parent, and that's just, from a discipleship standpoint, is the more they make, they start to express individuality and who they are. You just want to know that you're still a source that they can come to.
Yeah.
And you're there. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to condemn you. Yeah. Are there consequences to bad decisions? Absolutely. But am I willing to walk with you through those consequences? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love the vision of I'm walking alongside you, not behind you yelling, not in front of you dragging you, but I'm walking alongside you. Where are you at? I'm going to meet you where you are, which is all, it's all easier said than done. Mm-hmm. But, as a church, we want to be equipping parents to do that. That's good. Whether it's through seminars or, mid-link classes. I think the greatest source, though, is just relationships, community. Yeah. Like, if you're a parent and you're listening to this and you're like, man, I don't know where to start, like community. Yeah. Find other parents, other people who are in the same stage of life, and just be around them. And don't be afraid to ask them, like, hey, how do you handle this? And you'd be shocked at, everyone's walking through the same issues. Yeah. And it's beautiful. Like, God made us this way. Yeah. Let's just accept it for what it is and let's walk through it. Unfortunately, we live in a fallen world, but we know the answer for grace. And we know where we can have redemption. Yeah. And it's a beautiful, beautiful opportunity for us as parents to encourage our kids, see them grow, and hopefully someday go, man, look what God's done. Yeah. In their lives. That's good.
Well, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be, necessarily clean all the time, but I think you said it well. Like, one of the things that's most important is getting involved in community, making sure that your kids have these leaders and these adults that care about them in their lives. Absolutely. It's not, and listen, don't hear us wrong. Like, it's not, please bring your kids to our ministries and we'll fix them or we'll make them perfect, or that our ministries are like the solution. It's just, there's a whole interweaving like network of relationships and people that care about each other. And I think that's the kind of the special sauce of being involved in our church.
Yeah, and I think you just hit the nail right on the head. If you feel as though this isn't you, I don't have that in my life. My challenge to you as a parent would be just be present. Not just present in your kid's life, but being present in the community of the church. If it's not our church, great. Find another one. Right. Like, I mean, we're all... If they preach the gospel, we're all on the same team. I tell people that all the time. Something like, "Hey, we're moving. We're going to get to the church." I'm like, oh, "That's awesome!" Like, I love God-fearing, Bible-teaching churches. But if that's you and you're thinking, "Man, I'm missing that," I would the challenge would be just being present. Sometimes, really, is the biggest key. Yeah. Because when you're here, and man, I get it. There's a lot of things pulling our attention elsewhere. And again, I'm not trying. I know you and I. Our heart is not numbers. Seeing where we can be. But when I talk to a family, it just says my kid's struggling with this, and we just feel so disconnected, and this and that. And I'll go, well, I haven't seen you in a minute. Yeah. So just you have to be present. I love our Pastor Malcolm, what does he say? We don't chase grown folk. Sometimes.
Well, the nicer way of saying that is that life together is greater than life alone.
I like that one better.
But also, we don't chase grown folks.
No, but I mean, it's hard. It's hard. Like when you don't, as a minister, it breaks my heart when someone says, I just feel disconnected. I'm like, man, I want you to be here. I want you to be a part of it. And sometimes, we miss it. And that's the unfortunate reality. But we also want to be a part of your life and walk with you and get you connected. Yeah. Like you said, the idea of life together is greater than life alone. It's biblical. Yeah.
Well, if you're a member of our church and you ever have questions about any of our next gen environments, just know that you can reach out to us. We try to be as available as possible. And so if you ever have questions,
coffee.
We love coffee. Yeah, just bring coffee and we'll sit for hours.
We'll just go meet you across the street.
There you go.
We like to eat.
Tyler, can I do something with you that I've never done with any other podcast guest?
Yes, paper,
do some rapid fire questions here.
Yes. Ooh, okay. Rapid fire. I'm
just
down.
For fun. Okay.
Yes.
What's your favorite food, like birthday dinner?
Oh, favorite birthday.
And maybe give us the.
Am I going to a restaurant?
You're at home,
or am I cooking it?
And restaurant. What's your restaurant choice?
So if it's restaurant, it's going to be some type of Tex-Mex.
Okay.
Because like enchiladas are like my thing, but they're very time consuming. Favorite thing at home, man. I'm a steak and potatoes. I'm married an Iowa girl.
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah, steak and potatoes.
Steak and potatoes.
Okay. Now you recently just got a Blackstone. Like I'm a little surprised it's not like fried rice.
I haven't perfected it yet.
Okay.
But I tell you what.
I'm happy to be your guinea pig.
Don't sleep on the Blackstone flat top grill.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
What's your favorite
tacos?
What's your favorite movie?
Oh, so it's embarrassing. It's really
Shrek.
Not. 10 Things I Hate About You. No, Three Amigos is one of my favorite movies. I think it's because of my not childhood, but like middle school, high school. Those like things, those like core memories. For some reason, I remember watching it in like middle school and thinking it's funny, and I can quote it, and it makes my dad laugh.
That's fair.
And so I love that movie because I know I can quote any line from it, and my dad will laugh. And if my dad's like my number one like fan, like if I can make my dad laugh, I'm cool.
Yeah,
and
that's good.
Courtney laughs at some of it.
Yeah,
I love me some Napoleon Dynamite too.
I'm
such a. Don't get me wrong. I watch documentaries.
So good. Yeah, you watch the real life historical stuff, and I watch the more like theatrical stuff.
I've watched World War II in HD. Documentary on history. I've probably watched it 10 times. Yeah. I love like Saving Private Ryan, Band of Brothers.
Yes.
Oh, I've probably watched it 10, 15 times through.
If we go get in your car right now, or if we pull up your Spotify right now, what's playing?
Need to Breathe.
Wow.
I like them.
Wow.
But I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Okay. But outside of this podcast, what's your favorite podcast?
Oh, man. Well, you know the answer to that because you
favorite podcast.
You still haven't listened to it. I keep telling you.
Hardcore History.
Hardcore History. But he only releases like one episode a year.
And it's like 6 hours long.
They're amazing. I also love the Holy Post. Podcast.
The Holy Post.
Holy Post.
This is a good one, maybe. Hardcore History is about history, but Holy Post is going to be about some theological conversations that might be helpful
if
for
you are not familiar
parents.
with the Holy Post, I got turned on to it by Pastor Malcolm and some other people in our church. The Holy Post, it's created by Phil Vischer, VeggieTales fame, and then another guy that used to be a pastor. He was also an editor, I think, for a Relevant magazine, maybe. His name's Sky Jatani, and then Christian, I believe her last name is Stewart. They host it.
Not Kristen Stewart.
Maybe that's I'm thinking.
Kristen Stewart was on
an actress. So Kristen,
the vampire movie.
Christian, last name. Her name's Christian. Maybe I forget her name. I'm bad. Anyway, every week they release a new episode every Wednesday. Half of the episode is them talking funny stuff mixed with very relevant conversations that are going on in our community, in our world, in the evangelical community.
Okay.
It's thought-provoking. It's challenging at times.
I've listened to a couple episodes, and it definitely is like it kind of like what we're talking about. If you're wanting to prepare for some of these conversations, it's a great resource. It does help you.
Yeah, and they do it in kind of, I don't want to say irreverent, because you can listen to it with your kids. That's what I love. Yeah. When I go on road trips, we listen to it. They have some funny segments that they do, and my kids get excited. But I've listened to the Holy Post in my car with everything from a 13-year-old to 6-year-old, and some of the conversations that come of it are amazing. So the first half of the podcast is that. The second half is typically an interview with someone who's releasing a book, and I pretty much buy every book, which is a guilty pleasure of mine. But they're great. Yeah, that's a great podcast. You're looking for something with your kiddos.
If you've got 4 hours of just, or let's just say a day.
Oh, I'm playing golf.
You're playing golf. That's what it is.
I'm playing golf all day.
Okay. Not Frisbee golf.
Not frolfing. That's if I'm broke.
Right.
If it's do whatever I want, I'm a big golfer. I love to play golf.
Give me your dream golf course to play on.
Oh, it's Augusta. National.
Yeah?
I got to go there this past spring.
Yeah.
I got to go to the Masters, and it was everything I've ever dreamed it would be. I'd also love, once all my kids are out of the house, and I don't have to take them on the trip because they're expensive, I'd love to go to Europe and tour all the Irish and Scotland and England, play all those courses.
That's fun.
Which I'm sure my wife would love, golf trip.
So I was going to say, so if you're looking to bless your kids' ministry.
Yeah, hey, if you ever want to go play golf with Tyler, you just let me know. Yeah, I love golf. I played in high school, so.
Good deal. Tyler, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for everything you do. And,
same to you, man. Go Hub. Student
go
ministry.
Hub. All right. Well, we don't know how to end these things, so here we are. Bye.
You need another Chuck Norris joke?
Yeah, one more. Leave us with a joke.
Oh, crud. You said yes, and I don't know.
Do you know what? One of my kids at camp this last week walked up to me and he said, I'll make you a deal. If I can make you laugh, you give me $1 so I can buy a Jones soda.
Everyone's already turned the podcast off, so now it's just us talking anyway.
It's just you and me.
Okay, let's go.
Okay.
Oh, funny story. I have one of my best friends in college was on a Jones soda pitcher once.
Really?
He was really that was like his goal in college was to get on a Jones.
And he did it. So this kid walks up to me, and I think he heard this joke for the first time, and he was so excited about it. He goes, so a horse walks into a bar, and the bartender says, why the long face? And I stood there just totally blank face. I'm like, I heard that like 30 years ago. And he's like, what? So
that's like the
we got to work on the jokes.
That's like the there was an explosion at the cheese factory in France. There was debris everywhere. And with that, we're out.
All right. Thanks.